You probably could be my kid, actually. Yeah, actually, you and Field Yates. You guys are, they always put me. It's annoying. Like, NBC keeps putting me with these like young, good-looking guys that don't seem to age. It's whoever I'm working for. ESPN did it, and now NBC's doing it. It's annoying. Give me, like, I gotta. I'm trying to get me off. I gotta go to AMC or something like that. Where's the
History Channel?
Yeah, the History Channel.
Yeah, you can tell the history of fantasy football.
There you go.
It'd be amazing.
Call my agent. Yeah, B. Rubes, get my agent on the phone.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Happy Friday. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Connor Rogers, joined by Jake Croucher, and of course, the man who has not left us for the History Channel just yet, Matthew Berry.
There was not a lot of interest.
You did put in the agent call.
Oh, sure, of course. They just basically said, like, well, can you appear on Pawn Stars? And I said, not really. And they're like, then no. Because I think that's only on the history. Anytime I've tuned over to the History Channel, it's just Pawn Stars.
Yeah.
It's literally just nothing but Pawn Stars over and over and over again.
Well, I got good news for you. Yes. If you do go, we found you a co-host for the History Channel. We'll take a look right here. Yeah, we've been working behind the scenes.
Oh, no.
Yep, there it is.
Oh, wow.
Look at this duo. History awaits.
Wow.
You guys are cruel.
That's cruel. Yeah.
You guys are really cruel.
Dunk of the century right here.
This is maybe the first day ever it's not been nice to be grouped with Tom Brady.
No,
I think
exactly
this is the nadir of Tom Brady.
I don't know that Drew Brees is loving this picture either, to be honest with you. So, anyway, wow, what a ton of news, right?
Plenty of news.
We got up the air yesterday, and then it just all hell broke loose.
It's a waterfall.
So, lots of stuff to get to. By the way, coming up later today in the show, Connor, fantasy football royalty Austin Ekeler joins us here on the Happy Hour.
RB1.
So yes, it'd be really good. RB1 in your hearts, RB1 in the fantasy pages, and the most fantasy-friendly NFL player of any of them as well. Like, has truly embraced it, plays it. He's awesome. So can't wait to talk with Austin Ekeler later in the show. But, Connor, let's get into it here.
Let's get right into the Roto World headlines because, as Barry hinted at, there are tons of them, and no bigger to start with than Jamar Chase with the hip injury, expected to be sidelined for 4 to 6 weeks. This feels like a little out of nowhere.
Why can't we have nice things?
We cannot
Connor,
have nice things.
Why can't we have nice things? This sucks.
It does.
It's a tough one. It's not great. Good for Tyler Boyd. Managers, that's about it.
That's the biggest bump.
Yeah, I mean, so Tyler Boyd, look, so far this year, he's had the most scrimmage yards from the slot, the 5th most targets from the slot. Obviously, coming off the big week last week in Week 7 when he went 8 for 155. And look, this is a pass-happy team. I mean, the Bengals have, after kind of going sort of run-heavy early in the year and trying to force Joe Mixon down everyone's throats, they've really opened it up for Joe Burrow here. And so with the expectation, that's the news coming out, that they're going to move Boyd all over. He's not just going to be a slot guy. They'll play him on the outside as well. You'll see some Mike Thomas as well. But, Tyler Boyd and Hayden Hurst get a bump here. Look, T. Higgins was already a locked-in wide receiver 1. Now he's more of a top 5 guy than a top 10 guy. But this is good news for, there's a lot of targets to go around with Jamar Chase out.
Yeah, there are. And I don't think this is sky is falling stuff for Cincinnati either, because they do have that depth. This isn't like Cooper Kupp going down or Justin Jefferson for their teams. And the next 4 weeks, the next 4 games, Cleveland, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, with a bye in there as well. That's pretty friendly. So I think that Joe Burrow, for instance, he'll be fine.
Yeah, at 27% target share for Jamar Chase now up for grabs. And our expectation here is that Boyd, Hurst, and I guess some Mike Thomas, we'll see if he's worth the other Mike Thomas, if you will, if he's worth picking up. But yeah, I mean, I don't believe Boyd is 100% rostered, and so he's mostly rostered. And obviously, when the news came out, he got picked up a lot. But if for some reason he's somehow out there in your league, obviously picked him up. But yeah, I think Boyd comes in for me this week at wide receiver 25. So which is much higher than I've normally had him.
How about Hayden Hurst? Does this do anything for Hayden Hurst in terms of targets, or do you think it just funnels to all the wide receivers besides obviously Chase?
No, I mean, Hurst has had a nice year, and certainly, again, they're going to be pass heavy. He's going to be out on the field quite a bit. He comes in at number 8 for me this week. They play the Monday night game against the Browns, so I have Hurst as a top 8 fantasy tight end. You see it there on your screen with Boyd at 25. Higgins comes in at wide receiver 7. Burrow still a top 5 play for me, to Jay's point there. And, of course, Mixon comes in at RB8.
Yep. Mixon is the one I think who might benefit the most because Zach Taylor, deep in his soul, he just wants to run the ball. And against that Cleveland defense, they can't defend the run.
He's definitely got some Arthur Smith in him, Zach Taylor.
Oh, yes.
I don't care.
Heavy
I'm going to run
Arthur
the ball.
Smith quotient.
Yeah, the ghost of Hugh Jackson.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Establish it above all else.
Establish it above all else.
Besides Jamar Chase, many impact players that have not practiced this week, guys. Let's take a look at those. And I think we have to start with Deebo Samuel, who was not seen at practice Thursday. I think we're starting to trend with that hamstring injury that Deebo Samuel could be down this weekend. Obviously, he's not the only one on a pretty long list.
By the way, just before, as we're looking here at this screen, we can get into it a little bit later, but Ezekiel Elliott officially ruled out as we just hit the air as well. Got the alert from the Fantasy Life app. Also, not pictured here, but Chuba Hubbard has officially been ruled out as well. So we'll talk about those situations, the running back situations in Dallas and Carolina. But let's start with Deebo Samuel here, guys. And Brandon Ayuk becomes pretty interesting here, right? He's now had back-to-back games with 11 targets, right? A 28% target share over the last 2 weeks. We know there's a connection between Jimmy Garoppolo and Brandon Ayuk, Jay. So what are we thinking about Ayuk, especially if Deebo is out or at least somewhat limited?
Yeah, I think he's basically must start. Like you said, 22 targets the past 2 weeks. He's the favorite red zone target for Jimmy Garoppolo. And look, I don't think it's going to be the prettiest game between the Niners and the Rams, but you wouldn't expect it to be a 13-10 type of game either. And so I think that CMC, first full game, that will take away a little bit from the passing game, but that's probably mitigated by Deebo likely being out. So I think Ayuk is must start. And look, everyone's starting George Kittle anyway, but George Kittle even becomes more of a must start.
Yeah, and I do think you see Christian McCaffrey have a really heavy workload here. Some of the stuff they might have used Deebo for, some of the you know,
manufactured touches.
Manufactured touches, the reverses,
yep.
That I think those go to CMC or, other guys. So, Ayuk will be in there as well. But yeah, suddenly Ayuk looking up, he comes in at wide receiver 24 for me this week. And if Deebo's officially ruled out, might go a little bit higher.
Yep.
As we saw and said, Ezekiel Elliott is officially ruled out. He was not playing week 8 with the knee injury. I mean, that leads us to the question, how high does Tony Pollard climb now with Zeke down? Everybody's been clamoring for more touches for Pollard. Now they get what they wish for, just in a way where you lose Zeke.
Yeah, I think he to me, right now, I currently have him at RB16, but that was with the idea that Ezekiel Elliott might play. I'm going to move him up here. I think he probably gets into the, borderline top 10-ish for me. I think I would move Tony Pollard. I'm just sitting here looking at it like he's in that Raheem Mostert, Devin Singletary, Travis Etienne range for me, which you love the matchup at home against the Chicago Bears, who are bottom 10 against the run over the last 4 weeks. So, yeah, to me, I'm just sitting here looking at my rankings here. I think I would move him just ahead. Boy, I'd move him ahead of Etienne. I have Etienne at 12, and he's playing the Broncos, so I'd move him ahead of Etienne, probably ahead of Dameon Pierce as well against the Titans. So, yeah, Pollard comes in at probably like 10 or 11 for me this week. Absolutely must start.
Yep. Jay, dare I ask, is the Cowboys offense even a little scarier with the idea of Pollard being involved much more heavily?
I think so. I mean, the line doesn't move at all with Ezekiel Elliott going out. And there will be some smart people out there that argue that this is good for the Cowboys in a way. I don't think it necessarily is, because you want both of them and the ability to have protection against one going down in game. But Pollard is an explosive and elite back when he gets the ball. The Cowboys are a 10-point favorite at home against the Bears, so expect that they'll be running, and so Pollard's an RB1.
Yeah, and by the way, D'Onta Foreman, who had the big game last week, Carolina facing the Falcons this week. Falcons are a pretty good run defense, but just the volume that we expect D'Onta Foreman to get with Chuba Hubbard out. I think D'Onta Foreman, who I currently have at 28, and I think he'll move up a little bit, I think he becomes, a viable RB2 this week.
Let's get into Thursday Night Football. Yes, there was football played last night, despite all this injury news. The Ravens beat the Bucs 27-22. Bucs offense, while the numbers are not hideous, did not really look right throughout this game, guys. Levante David from the Bucs defense, of course, on the loss after the game. It ain't no more looking in the mirror. You've got to dig in your soul and pull one out. Whatever you think you're doing, it ain't it. We've got to find a way to get better some way, somehow.
They were bad.
Do you think they could dig out of this? Doesn't look good.
It does not look good. They were bad. by the way, I'm not convinced Todd Bowles is a great coach. I think he's a really good defensive coordinator, but I'm not convinced he's a great head coach. Like, they look undisciplined, they look unorganized, they just, I think the offense misses Bruce Arians. That much is clear as well. Like, I don't know if they can dig their way out of this. What I can tell you is that for those of us who play fantasy football, I think the players you care about, the Mike Evans, the Chris Godwins, Leonard Fournette to an extent, we'll talk about all of them, but I think they'll continue to have value.
Yeah, I think with Brady, his demise it's a little premature. Like, Brady is fine because he's not Tom Brady from last year where he was favourite for MVP for much of the season. Look at his past 3 games. Obviously not very good against the Steelers or Panthers, not putting up huge production, also just not getting the yards per attempt. He's throwing it a ton and just not getting the yards. Last night, not great either, but at least he did, have the touchdown, no picks, and he does put up 17 fantasy points. So I think Brady's he's like the 14th best quarterback in the league right now.
Yeah, listen, a little bit higher. Listen, you think about that Panthers game, Mike Evans catches that touchdown. It's a different scenario. Last night, he did throw a second touchdown. He threw a touchdown pass to Cade Otton. It gets called back due to the holding penalty. Looked like he would have had a touchdown pass to Chris Godwin, but there's a false start on Leonard Fournette. And there were a number of times, because I took Mike Evans anytime touchdown, so I'm watching this very closely. There were a number of times where Mike Evans was open in the end zone, and they just couldn't connect, and Brady was off. And that's I think, part of it is that Tom Brady, who is so accurate, doesn't seem as accurate as he has been in the past. As we see some footage here of Tom Brady just, like, missing his guys. Like, it's weird, right? They're having to do a lot more there's one, right? Evans was wide open in the end zone right there, and just a lower pass, and that's 7. And so, he's just here. The deep ball to Evans also gets underthrown as well. Just inaccurate. Like, not on the same page with his guys as well. Not shown in this highlights package that we're sitting here watching is the fact that he was also dumping off a lot. Like, there were a lot. It just felt like they weren't being nearly as aggressive downfield. A lot of those passes, and you sort of see why, because when they were being aggressive downfield, for the most part, they were ineffective. They hit a couple of big ones with Godwin and Evans, but for the most part, like, you're right, he just doesn't look like Tom Brady. Like, he doesn't look like the guy that you're scared of.
No, he doesn't. And it's not just the deep ball. There's some velocity that clearly looks like it's missing. It's that he's short hopping these 3rd and 8 passes, which is just stuff that Tom Brady doesn't do. And obviously there's a lot going on there, and who knows. But still, I think the concern coming into the season on the Bucs was the offensive line. Offensive line is fine. They are protecting him. Evans and Godwin are healthy. I think Brady should figure it out a little bit as the season goes on. So I still think you're starting Tom Brady each week, unless for some reason, you happen to pick up Geno Smith and he's got an amazing matchup.
I don't know. I'm not dropping him, but I don't think I've moved him out of must-start territory. Through 8 weeks, he's got 9 touchdowns. Last year he had 9 touchdowns in the first 2 games, and they play the Rams next. Like, you don't feel good about that. They'll have 10 days to prepare, but look, there's a report out this morning that they've filed for divorce, and that Tom and I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't want to get into the man's personal life.
They both announced it.
Right, they both
him and Giselle.
Right,
yeah.
so they. But my point is, the only reason I bring that up is I don't want to speculate on a man's personal life or hers, or as somebody who's gone through divorce myself, it's awful. What I would say is that, but there's going to be, because they are such a public couple, there's going to be even more distractions over the next 10 days with this news than there would be for a normal football player who's struggling a little bit.
Yep. I think with Brady, I think the thing to hold on to is that they still are throwing a lot. He's had 42 pass attempts or more in 5 straight games, so you're still going to get that volume, which I think gives you a bit of a floor.
And like I said, again, we are looking at a year in which quarterback fantasy play is more or less depressed. There's the Mahomes, the Allens, the Jalen Hurtses of the world, Lamar, but for the most part, it's Herbert hasn't been Herbert. Russ Wilson hasn't been Russell Wilson. Rodgers, Stafford, Dak hasn't done anything that makes you, stand up and take notice yet. So my point is 17 fantasy points and should have been more last night. It's just right. He ain't the guy. He ain't the top 3 fantasy quarterback that we had last year. But is he usable? Yes, but he's just not he's no longer, for me, no longer must start. But so few quarterbacks these days are, including the guy he'll face next, Matthew Stafford's not must start anymore.
No, not at all.
Jay, you mentioned how much they're throwing. With that has arrived less running for Leonard Fournette, less usage. I mean, second straight game with less than 10 rushes. His last 2 games, 8 rushes for 19 yards. This game, 9 for 24. Concern level with that with Fournette as this offense kind of goes the wrong direction.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of concern. I think the game script is a huge part of it. Last night, Fournette got the first carry on the first play of the second half and then never carried the ball again. And because they were down and they had a drive with Rachaad White. So I think you're concerned, but I do think he has something of a flaw just because he still is Leonard Fournette. He still does get the receiving game usage, which gave you an extra 6 points or so last night. So I still think you're starting Leonard Fournette. It's just that he's not the RB1 locked in that he could have been.
He's more of a touchdown-dependent RB2, but again, 4 touchdowns in the last 4 games. He's getting, they like giving it to him when they're in close. So I think you're still starting Leonard Fournette, but yes, I would lower. I think his overall value is lower than it has been recently.
Let's talk about the Ravens. Big night for Lamar Jackson.
But just last thing before we move to the Ravens, Rachaad White remains a must-add. Like, if he's still available in your league somehow, like, he is somebody that would be a top 10 running back if anything happened to Fournette, and they're clearly increasing his role week after week.
Yep.
With the Ravens, Lamar Jackson, 2 touchdowns through the air. He had over 40 rushing yards, almost 22 fantasy points. And this was without Mark Andrews for most of the game, as Isaiah Likely had a huge game, but Lamar, a massive week for him.
Yeah, and he was the big winner last night. Coming out of the first half, I was texting friends being like, where is the 2019 guy? And then he showed up straight away, which is almost on cue. And then he has that 25-yard run, and then he basically just takes over the game. And look, I think there's 5 guys in the league who can win MVP this year. Lamar Jackson is definitely one of them. But Matthew, has there ever been a bigger gap between real-life useful offense and fantasy useful offense than this Baltimore team? Because it's just Lamar Jackson right now, and then Gus Edwards goes down, Mark Andrews is hurt. He does it in the second half with guys like Devin Duvernay, Kenyon Drake, and co. I just don't know what you do fantasy-wise with this offense.
DeMarcus Robinson, nothing, and that's a great point. Like, again, we'll talk about the injuries here in a second, but there was no one that you can't. You're probably sitting there watching the game and you're frustrated, but you can't fault yourself like, I wish I'd started Kenyon Drake or DeMarcus Robinson or it is like it's just just a bunch of randos.
But do you stash Isaiah Likely?
Oh,
after seeing that?
1,000%.
Right.
So this is somebody that we talked about Isaiah Likely in the preseason. We love him. This guy was a star in the preseason. We thought they would use more 2 tight end sets. Candidly, I thought Isaiah Likely would be used more than he has been. I have him in every dynasty league except for one. I'm super annoyed about that. Damian, our producer here, outbid me in that dynasty league. That's the annoying thing of playing in fantasy leagues with the guys you do fantasy analysis
they figure it
with.
out pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they know what you're into.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I love Likely, and basically felt like last night he became a 1-for-1 replacement to Mark Andrews, right? I mean, he was. You were like, oh yeah, that's the guy that we saw in the preseason. Where's he been this whole time, right? He ran a route on 69% of his snaps. He played the most snaps of any Ravens pass catcher, right? I mean, 6 for 77 and a touchdown, and looked the part, guys.
Yep.
If Mark Andrews, any week that Mark Andrews misses, Isaiah Likely is like a nailed-on top 7, top 8 tight end. And I think, just going back to the rushing attack, I think the most kind of poetic thing about it is that the Ravens carried the ball 33 times last night. They averaged 7 yards per carry. Fantasy-wise, who was the most productive rusher? It was Devin Duvernay, because he was the one who got the touchdown, which just sums it up.
Yeah, I mean, Kenyon Drake also got a touchdown, a receiving touchdown as well. But yes, I mean, super frustrating as well, especially for Gus Edwards, who ran the ball well. Got 11 touches. He was averaging, almost 5 yards a carry. But he leaves the game with an injury, as does Mark Andrews. Had a shoulder injury in the second period. We'll talk about Bateman in a second. But after the game, head coach John Harbaugh saying he didn't think it was serious for either Andrews or Edwards. We'll probably learn more today and over the weekend. Worth noting, next week the Ravens play the Saints, and then they're on a bye. And so at 5-3, do they decide to sit Andrews? Because he's been nicked up. He was nicked up last week as well. Do they maybe decide to sit Andrews? If he does, Likely, even though it's a tough matchup against the Saints are really good against opposing tight ends, likely would be a top 10 fantasy tight end if Andrews were to miss in any game that he misses.
Yeah, particularly because they won this game and they go to 5-3. On BetMGM, they're minus 250 to win the division now. Obviously, Chase goes down for the Bengals. That helps there. So you would think they might skew conservative, particularly after Andrews did nothing the week prior.
And the bottom line is now they have a backup that they feel like they can trust.
Yep.
I mean, he was great as a blocker last night, so they can keep him on the field for those pass-catching opportunities. Andrew's dealing with upper and lower body injuries. Maybe he does get that breather next week.
Just quickly on Likely, Connor. Isaiah Likely in college had the highest PFF grade of any tight end in history. Did you see this in college? Was he this type of guy?
Super productive at Coastal Carolina. The question is, of course, level of competition. He gets to go through the all-star circuit because he was a senior. And the bottom line is he just needed to add weight and become stronger as a blocker. He was a good move blocker in college, but he was a pass-catching tight end, a move tight end. Baltimore gets him in their system. He gets stronger. They're letting him play on the line, off the line, and he looks great. So the potential was always there, and he went to a place that it's an offense that runs through tight ends.
Yep.
So it maximizes that potential.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully this is, even if Andrews comes back, that they, this is a little bit of a breakout game for Isaiah Likely, as their pass catchers have been inconsistent.
Yes.
Maybe they do like to run two tight end sets quite a bit. Obviously, it's a run-heavy offense. Maybe Likely has some deeper league value, even if Andrews is back.
Yep.
Rashad Bateman drives me up a wall.
You done? Cut Dumpsterville?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dunzo.
By the way,
Okay.
if you play on Yahoo, and I hate this rule, but if you do play on Yahoo, it is what it is. Don't hate the player, hate the game. If you play on Yahoo, you can drop Rashad Bateman. If you didn't start him, but he's just on your bench, drop him.
I don't like
somebody else useful. I hate that too.
Yeah.
But it is the rule. That's
Feels like a free pass.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yahoo
the
allows
rewind
that. I
button on
don't
Madden.
like that. I
Yeah.
think they should change it, but that is the rule. So Bateman, who played in 9 of the first 10 snaps of the game, and then once again, he keeps getting hurt. Like, he's just not getting any looks. Like, they spread it around. It's a run-heavy offense. Like, no.
It's also the same foot we're dealing with now. This was the foot injury that kept him out, and now it's coming back.
it's
That's
not
a little
good.
concerning.
And also, even when he was healthy, like he had those 2 bomb touchdowns, one the 75-yarder against Miami, then one against the Jets in week 1. Outside of that, he's really done nothing. Only twice in his career with Lamar as his quarterback has he gotten more than 4 receptions in a game. So you're hanging on to the idea of potential, which has never actually been realized. And at this point, I think there are probably just better options, particularly with guys like, is there more upside in Kadarius Toney than Rashad Bateman at this point?
Yeah, we talked about Kadarius Toney on the show yesterday. Connor and I did, because that news broke while we were on the air, but you weren't here yesterday. Any quick thoughts on Kadarius Toney to the Chiefs?
I think it's a similar situation to Isaiah Pacheco, where you have to pick him up just because of the upside, because he's in an offense with Mahomes, but there's a 90% chance he's not going to give you what you want, but just for that 10%, you have to pick him up.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I'm just not going crazy on it because, again, it is sort of death by 1,000 cuts when you face the Chiefs. Yep. They use so many guys here, similar to Buffalo, right? I mean, and we'll talk as we get into the waiver wire show next week, and we'll see about the health of Bateman and everyone else. But, nice games for Devin Duvernay, and I thought Demarcus Robinson looked good.
He's good.
Just to the eye test. So nice job there by the Ravens. Whether you can count on them for fantasy production remains to be seen. We'll talk about that. Guess where we're going tomorrow?
Going to Buffalo.
We're going to Buffalo. Me and you, not Connor.
No.
Yeah,
Connor's got another gig he's got to deal with, but you and
They're
I
just
are
leave me
gonna be-
behind.
Jake Croucher, you and I, Michael Smith, and a cast of thousands, literally a cast of thousands, will be live from Highmark Stadium outside the Bills, 11 a.m. to 1 o'clock Eastern. Come one, come all, and if you can't see us there in person, watch us on Peacock.
NFL season is here, and the NBC Sports Predictor app is giving you a shot at winning $100,000 by entering Sunday Night 7's free contest between the Packers and the Bills. So if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. Week 8, fellas. What's on tap for Week 8? Got to start with the Bears. Justin Fields been a hot topic in the fantasy land after a slow start to the season. Now runs into a Cowboys defense, a stingy, fast Cowboys defense. Jay, do you think Justin Fields will come back down to earth this week against Dallas, or do you think he keeps this ride going?
Probably. I was in Chicago yesterday, and let me tell you, no one in Chicago is excited about the Bears, even though they came off that win. It's like, no, it was a complete fluke. I'm higher on the Bears than most, I think. I just believe in this defense. I do believe Fields is trending in the right direction. He's getting better each week. And I think with the Cowboys, yes, they have this formidable defense, but it's mainly in the pass game. It's mainly with Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs. Against the run, they're still good, but they're not as elite. And so maybe the Bears have lucked into this situation where, well, you're great at defending the pass. We don't pass anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I do think the Fields will be able to accumulate volume. They're 10-point dogs, so they likely will have to
He's had
put it in his hands.
170 rushing yards over the last 2 games. Again, you're chased by Micah Parsons. You take off. And so he's just so fast. He comes in at quarterback 12 for me. I don't think it's always going to be pretty, but I do think there's going to be some rushing upside there. There's potentially some junk time as well, to your point. The Cowboys are, over the last 4 weeks, the Cowboys are 13th against the run, which is good, but not dominating either. So, again, I think he's a low-end QB1 this week.
I like the Bears to make the playoffs at plus 1,500. It's the NFC. They're half a game back, plus 1,500. Should be half that.
Not a bad bet. I like it.
Okay, let's talk about their backfield. We know they've gotten finally designed runs for Justin Fields, but this backfield is always going to get a heavy workload. The question is, between David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, who's it going to be, and what is the rankings gap for you, Barry?
Yeah, it's pretty significant. I have Montgomery at 23, Herbert at 37, so 15 spots between the guys. I get it. Herbert scored the touchdown last week on the one pass, but ultimately, David Montgomery's playing 57% of the snaps, 15 for 62. We all like Khalil Herbert more, but we're not Matt Eberflus. And so it does feel like who's got the more guaranteed workload. It feels like David Montgomery to me. In a negative game script, you don't love either of these guys. Again, both guys outside the top 20 for me, but I have Montgomery ranked ahead of Herbert this week.
Negative game script, but at the same time, I'm not sure that it matters for the Bears who just run it anyway. Remember what happened against Green Bay in week 2 where they were down big and they just Fields had 11 pass attempts?
Falcons.
I think they just run.
Jay, obviously been a tough year for Darnell Mooney, only averaging 7.1 fantasy points per game. Is he in sit range for you, full sit range for you?
I think so against the Cowboys. I feel pretty bad about Mooney and my flex. At the same time, outside of this week, I think there is scope for him to return some value at some point. Particularly, 7.1 per game, that's terrible. First game was a monsoon against the Niners. Second game, they never threw against the Packers. So I do think that he has some upside, but this week against that defense, I'm not super interested in Darnell Mooney.
Yeah, he comes in at wide receiver 30 for me. You're hoping for one big play here. The Cowboys are the #1 scoring defense in the NFL over the last 4 weeks. And so Mooney, who, doesn't have a lot of competition for targets, it's Equanimeous St. Brown, right? The Cowboys will focus on stopping Darnell Mooney in this one. He's not getting a ton of targets. He's actually 28th among all wide receivers in terms of total targets over the last month. So it's just, it's not a high volume passing offense, as we know. They like to run. So, again, Mooney comes in at 30 for me. You hope for one big play.
The issue with Mooney is he's made big plays. He's had big catches. He's still not providing much value.
Moving over to the AFC, Jets-Patriots, a game of confusing backfields, fellas. And obviously, Breece Hall down. The Jets make the trade for James Robinson, although Robert Saleh this morning did not commit to James Robinson playing. Do you confidently start Michael Carter, Jay?
I think you do. And look, Connor, obviously, I'm the Jets man.
Yes, of course.
With my Jets shirts here. You've gone away from the Jets
back to a different era.
Yeah,
Titans of New York.
But I think you start Michael Carter confidently. I think that with the usage that we expect him to get in the pass game, we don't really know what the first, second down is going to look like. There'll be a lot more James Robinson there, obviously, than on third down. But, I think that you're starting Michael Carter. James Robinson, probably more of a wait and see. But, what are you hearing from the Jets, Connor?
Yeah, I wonder if some of that also is the knee thing he was dealing with Jacksonville, where they don't want to put him in a new system, coming off where he was a little banged up, and throw him into the fire. I think this game you confidently start Michael Carter. I think he's in for a big day against a run defense that has had a lot of ups and downs.
Very bad.
Yeah, they've been really rough. But long term, what do you think of James Robinson?
Yeah, I was just going to say to your point about Michael Carter, Patriots have allowed at least 70 yards from scrimmage to a running back in 4 straight games now as well. Robinson either be active in this game and maybe not play that much, or won't be active as well. To your point, Robert Saleh, not saying he's definitely playing this week. Got to get him up to speed. Michael Carter's had 6 different games where he's had at least 15 touches. He's averaging 17.9 fantasy points per game. I think there's a very good chance he gets at least 15 touches in this one against the Patriots. Long term, I think ultimately once Robinson gets up to speed, he's in that lower end RB2 territory. He's not going to be Breece Hall, but Carter becomes a viable flex.
Yeah, they love Carter at the goal line,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny for a 5'7" running back.
Yeah, never understood that. Never really
Gets
understood
lost
that.
behind the line of scrimmage, find the hole, cut through. Let's look at the other backfield in this game, the Patriots. Obviously, Ramondre Stevenson has really taken off this year. That was one of your summer faves, Ramondre Stevenson.
I was big on the. I don't understand why Damian Harris is being ranked and drafted ahead of Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre was one of my big sleepers, and so far it's paid off. So far on the season, he's a top 10 fantasy running back on a points per game basis. He comes in at running back 15 for me this week, right? Coming off career highs in receptions and receiving yards. He was used on every third down play against the Bears as well. He actually outsnapped Damian Harris 40-9.
Yep. Now,
Harris, that was his first game back from injury, so I think you'll see Harris's usage increase. But Stevenson now has played on 77% of the team's offensive snaps for 3 straight games, 3 rushing touchdowns. We talk about his passing game usage, but Stevenson actually has 3 rushing touchdowns in just the last 2 games. I think it's a nice matchup here with the Jets. You don't love the matchup with the Jets, but I don't think it's one that scares you either. So,
well, I think with what Mac Jones has dealt with, they need to lean on the run. I mean, he just does not look comfortable. And, if Bailey Zappi comes in, they will lean on the run for sure. So, back to the NFC, the Rams coming out of the bye week. The Rams' offense has not looked right all year, fellas. Is there any hope, Jay, that out of the bye week they finally turn things around?
I wouldn't have thought so. Yeah. No, I think this offensive line is just completely unviable. This Niners defense isn't what it was a few weeks ago when they destroyed the Rams. And also, the Rams do get Van Jefferson back, which I think is relatively important. Van Jefferson isn't peak Jerry Rice or anything, but he does at least give them a vertical element, which should open up the field a little bit. But no, I don't think you're feeling good about Matthew Stafford.
Stafford's QB 15 from me this week. Week 2 was the last time he had a multiple touchdown game. Yeah, while the 49ers may not be what they were, they're still a pretty good defense. I get it. The Chiefs kind of destroyed them. The Chiefs are a different story than the Rams here. So Stafford, who has 5 interceptions in his last 3 games against San Francisco, to me is just a mid-tier QB2. And I can't imagine starting Allen Robinson in this one. It's really Cooper Kupp. That's what you're Cooper Kupp, and if you were desperate, I could see using Higbee.
Yep. We're going to take a break. When we are back, Roto-World's Pat Kerrane joins us for Fantasy Rich and Fantasy Poor matchups of the weekend.
So I want you to raise whichever one is the best. I'm going to ask you a question. You tell me. Okay, ready? The better nickname.
Oh.
You got to pick one.
Okay, got you. Oh, no. I'm doing that on purpose. All right.
Okay. The better nickname.
I like this one.
Okay, it's pretty good.
Everyone knows this guy.
I know. Okay, the best touchdown celebration.
Oh. I never seen his yet, but.
Okay. That's fine. The waddle.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm with it. The better trash talker.
Oh.
By far.
Woo!
You don't want those problems?
Love him. Love him.
That was Maria Taylor with Tua Tagovailoa talking Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill. You could find that full interview on the NFL on NBC YouTube channel, where you can also rewatch this show.
Yeah.
If you desire.
Or see clips. You don't want all of it. You're like,
Appetizer of the show.
Just, YouTube shorts.
A happy hour.
There you go. Happy hour. I see what you did. Little appetizers, little apps. Hey, look who's here.
Welcome in, Pat Kerrane from Roto World. If you're new to watching this segment, it's time for Fantasy Rich, Fantasy Poor. We do this every Friday now. The Fantasy Rich matchups, the Fantasy Poor matchups of Week 8. We like to start with the rich because you like to start with the good news.
Yeah, sure. Of course. Pat writes an article called the walkthrough. Walkthrough. I was going to say the walkthrough. I was going to say the breakdown. The breakdown's not right. The walkthrough, which goes through every single game in crazy detail. It's up and it's on rotoworld.com, NBCSportsEdge.com. You do a great job with it every single week. So let's talk a couple here in terms of Fantasy Rich. Give us one Fantasy Rich matchup this week.
Yeah, so I like the Lions and the Dolphins. The Lions, they just got...
And see, we did the thing with the Tua. That makes sense. Look at our producer.
The transitions on the show.
I mean, just right. I'm just.
You wouldn't know it's the end of the week.
No.
The Lions, maybe not the most fantasy-rich game environment, if you were watching them against the Cowboys, right?
Okay.
But now they get a Dolphins defense that's kind of like the Cowboys defense with the difficulty turned down. And, very similar in terms of the pass rush is the strength of this defense, but they're vulnerable in the secondary. They're banged up in the secondary, and you can beat them with a quick passing game, which is a perfect fit, not just for how the Lions want to attack, but also for who we care about in fantasy. Then on the other side of this game, you have a Dolphins passing game that is actually, in the games Tua Tagovailoa has finished, fairly aggressive. They have a 6% pass rate over expected in those games, and that's really important because you can attack the Lions however you want. It's really up to the opposing offense. They don't defend the pass. They don't defend the run. They rank 32nd in efficiency allowed per dropback, 32nd in PFF's coverage grades. They have a weak pass rush. They're 31st in efficiency allowed per rush. So it's really up to you. If Mike McDaniel is aggressive in this game, we could see volume, we could see efficiency from the Dolphins, and that could help the Lions get pushed to the air as well.
Barry, hearing all of that, on the Lions side of things, this is an offense that has had an up and down year. Is there anybody you like that gets a little bit of a matchup bump to take advantage of some of Miami's deficiencies on defense?
I don't think so. To me, I mean, you're starting all the obvious guys. You're starting Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're starting DeAndre Swift. You're starting T.J. Hockenson. I could see using Jamal Williams, who got a bunch of goal line work even when DeAndre Swift was active here. So I could see you using Jamal Williams as a flex. He comes in at running back 27 for me this week. But I'm not sitting there going, well, let me see if I can figure out a way to get Josh Reynolds into my lineup.
You're not streaming Jared Goff
No.
necessarily.
I mean, I have Goff as a QB2 this week. He's number 13 for me.
Pat, on the Dolphins side, we know Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle aren't going anywhere from lineups, but Tua, Mostert, who's been incredible this year, although a little bit of a knee maintenance this week, and then Gesicki's kind of a wild card as well. Is there anybody in that category that gets the bump?
I think Mostert's a pretty strong start in this game environment. Like I said, you can run on the Lions too, and if the passing game's going, they're scoring points, that's going to be good for Mostert too, and if he doesn't have a huge volume workload, and that's not really his game anyway. He's an efficiency back, he's a speed back. He's coming off the second highest snap share of the season so far, so I like him a lot. Gesicki, I mean, he's a play for a touchdown, but he has a pretty strong red zone role, so I think you can put him in. Tight end's pretty weak this year.
Lions defense are tied for the third most touchdowns allowed to opposing tight ends as well. So right, if you're in that touchdown dependent tight end range where you're looking for a guy that needs to get into the end zone, Gesicki may be a pretty good bet as well. Mostert, to your point, makes my love list this week, and Tua is a top 5 play.
One more fantasy-rich matchup this week. Cardinals traveling to Minnesota. Minnesota's favored by 3.5 points. The over-under line at 49. Pat, do you see a lot of vulnerable defense in this one?
I do. I mean, the Cardinals' defense is quite vulnerable, and when the Vikings have been playing vulnerable secondaries, they've tended to be aggressive, entering their bye, playing the Dolphins. They had an 11% pass rate over expected. They've been aggressive in those types of situations. Now they get a defense that ranks 31st in drop-back success rate. They're 30th in PFF's coverage grades. They're 29th in PFF's pass rush grades. You can drop back against this defense frequently without worrying too much. I think we could see passing volume up in this game. I think we could see the Vikings passing efficiently. That could help the Cardinals get pushed to the air. The Cardinals have resisted getting pushed to the air. They were not interested in getting in a shootout with the Eagles. They've been run first this season, but that could change a little bit with DeAndre Hopkins back, with Robbie Anderson ramping up. They now have a chance to click a little bit against a Vikings defense that ranks 31st in coverage grade.
Barry, I remember Irv Smith appearing on the love list this week, so he's somebody that gets a little bit of a matchup bump here. When you look at Minnesota's offense, is that the case for guys like Cousins and Thielen as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, certainly, it's as we said here, it's a fantasy-rich environment as well, and so we expect a lot of points to be scored. Cardinals are a bottom 12 pass defense over the last 4 weeks. I mean, look, as bad as Andy Dalton played last week against Arizona, he still was a top 5 fantasy quarterback last week. And so Cousins, off of the bye, they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. The game is not in prime time. The game is in Minnesota. 2 things that bode well for Kirk Cousins and Adam Thielen. I do think both guys are viable this week. Cousins, for me, comes in at QB7, so I'm as a QB1 this week. And then Adam Thielen, for me, obviously you're already starting Justin Jefferson. I mentioned Irv Smith. We like tight ends against Arizona. Juwan Johnson, of course, with the 2 touchdowns last week against them. Adam Thielen, 29 for me this week. So top 30 play.
Pat, on the Arizona side of things, Benjamin and Rondale Moore, 2 interesting players from this that I think you outlined that can get a little bit of a boost here. How do you handle both of those guys going into this game?
Yeah, I mean, Eno's played so well with Connor out that I think you'll continue to see him involved. Rondale Moore was in a tough spot last week. He was playing on the outside again. Greg Dortch was getting slot work. That is not where Rondale Moore should be, but I think that was because they just didn't want A.J. Green out there. If Robbie Anderson is in a full-time role, which he was not last week, he was around 20% of the routes last week. He could be up more like 50, 60% of the routes. That means more slot snaps for Rondale Moore. I think he could be a big part of this game if it gets fun.
The fantasy poor matchup of the week is in London. Sorry, London. I feel like you get a lot of these games handed to you. Broncos at Jaguars. Jaguars are 2.5-point favorites in this game. The over-under below 40. It is at 39.5. Pat, what else do I need to say?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. We've got a Broncos team that showed last week that Russell Wilson isn't the only problem. He's definitely not playing well, but this is a team that's actually been run first on first down, which means, they're kind of prioritizing the run game. Now, the run game is terrible, so that's not a great thing to do. We also have an offense that's going to be very sleep deprived after Russell Wilson was doing high knees the entire way to London. Got to factor that in.
What else needs to be said?
On the Jaguars side, Trevor Lawrence's accuracy has swung wildly week to week. He was quarterback 27 in completion percentage over expected last week. That was actually worse than Brett Rypien in his spot start for the Broncos. He's now going against an elite Broncos defense. They're first in efficiency allowed per dropback, first in dropback success rate, first in PFF's coverage grades. This is not the type of defense you want to test out your quarterback against if he's struggling with his ball placement. Given that, and given the fact that Travis Etienne is starting to emerge, I could see them going with a run-heavy type of game plan here. And if the Broncos are running inefficiently and too much on the other side, the clock could just be running bleeding plays out of this game.
Looking at this game that's got plenty of its offensive problems, who are the players that still you could start in a way that you don't bench because Denver's defense has been lights out? And the
Travis
Jaguars.
Etienne.
You're still starting
That's the entire list.
That's it.
I really
No
think that's
Sutton.
the entire list. I have Sutton at 22.
Okay.
You probably are still starting him. I think last week's.
He got sauced. Lost in the sauce.
He got lost in the sauce. Exactly. Sauce Gardner shut him down. I still prefer him, and weirdly, damning with faint praise, but Russell Wilson is an upgrade over Brett Rypien. So, I think Sutton, again, he's a high-end wide receiver 3 for me this week, but that's normally lower than I would rank him this week. Christian Kirk made the hate list this week. Trevor Lawrence made the hate list. You're not starting Russell Wilson. You don't feel great about either running back in this one. Mike Boone on the IR, so it'll be a committee between Gordon and Murray in a low-scoring game. Does one of them fall into the end zone? Sure, maybe, but you don't feel good about predicting which one it'll be. Gordon played more snaps last week, but Murray got the touchdown. Low-scoring game. You're starting Travis Etienne, and that's it.
A reminder to everybody, go to rotoworld.com, read Pat Kerrane's The Walkthrough for every matchup. You got the appetizer today. You got the 3 matchups. You could read every matchup. It's time for last call when we're back, and Austin Ekeler will be joining us.
Let's go.
Good stuff, guys.
Yep.
Funny story. Last night I had my fantasy draft. It's a 20-person league. So, I had to make the picks 15 seconds, so it wouldn't take hours. So I was freaking 20th pick. We're about round 4, and I'm looking at my team. I'm not looking at my players. I'm looking at what positions I have. And it wasn't my team. That I was looking at the wrong team. And, and so I was dang, I thought I picked up a kicker. And maybe it didn't go through or something like that. And so then I go and I pick up another kicker. Another kicker. So new team.
That was Austin Ekeler on not only picking 2 kickers, but have you ever played in a 20-person league?
I never have. I've played in a 16-person league, but yeah, Michael Smith plays in these 20-team leagues. It's insanity.
You've never played in a 20-person league?
No.
You've played in thousands of leagues.
What kind of players are on the bench in
nothing?
20-person
I've played in a bunch
leagues?
of 16-team leagues. I've played in 16-team leagues. So anyway, I don't think I've ever done a 20-person league. But yeah, super deep. Just OIFA. Not good. That's the official term, OIFA.
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 An OIFA league.
Yeah, an OIFA league. Oi. Like you look at the free agents and you're like, ah, man, could anyway. So I don't know. I don't know what would motivate you to play in a 20-team league.
Too many friends?
But we can ask our next guest that. He is fantasy football royalty. He is not only the number one running back in fantasy football, but he is in fact fantasy friendly. I don't know that there is a player in the NFL that is more friendly to fantasy players because he is one of us.
He is one
right?
of us.
It's the meme, one of us, one of us.
One of us.
Yes, one of us. It is my fantasy ride or die from last year, Austin Ekeler, joining the happy hour. Thank you, my friend. What's up, my friend? How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Why were you in a 20-team league? We showed the clip of you from Hard Knocks before you joined the air, before you got on the air.
I drafted 2 kickers on accident.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I have a big Twitch community, and they love fantasy football as well. So I try to get all of them, as many as I can, in the league. So that leads to 20-man leagues, which are brutal. I wouldn't recommend.
So, yeah, no, absolutely. I do not recommend it either. Because I feel like I played in a number of 16-team leagues, and I think that's okay. But 20, it feels like it's not – it gets even so deep that it's just not fun at that point. It's literally just anyone with a pulse.
Yeah, if you are the team that has the least amount of injuries, you're probably going to win. Because one injury pretty much kills your team because there's no one else to pick up because there's no one available. Because even a quarterback, like there's some teams that don't even have a quarterback for their bye week because there's none available because they're all picked up.
So, Austin, you have – oh, no doubt. Like, Austin, let me ask you this. You have been, you've embraced the fantasy football community in such a massive way, and I think the community has responded in kind, embracing you so much so. And I know you always campaign for fantasy managers to draft you in the preseason. So my question is, I know you play. I want to know, how many leagues are you in this year, and is there any league that you have where you don't have Austin Ekeler on your roster?
Yeah, so right now I have 6 different teams across just my team, like my atmosphere, I guess. My foundation has a few teams, has 4, and then I have a personal one with my Twitch community, and then I have one with Michael Fabiano. And I have myself in only 2 leagues. I tried to trade up for myself in Fabs' league. I traded all the way up to number 3, and I went number 1 overall. So it was like that's cool, but also I wanted to get myself. So right now we're sitting with 6 teams, and I have help. I have a manager that helps me out because it is a lot to keep up with, as you all know, keeping up with trades, keeping up with injuries and things like that. So right now I have one team, my 20-man league team. I am 0-7 because my first and second round pick got hurt. So pretty much wait until next year on that league. So, and then I have some teams that are doing pretty well. So it's a whole mix.
Austin, I assume you won't be doing it this year given your RB1, but have you ever benched yourself in fantasy?
Not a chance. Never bench Austin Ekeler on fantasy.
There you go. That's a good rule to live by.
Yeah. As a fantasy football player, have you ever benefited from or had to sweat Monday Night Miracles of a game you are playing in?
I mean, every game is a sweat for me, right? Like I have to go out there, like I have to do my best regardless if I have myself on my fantasy, if I need 30 points or 50 points or 2 points from me, right? I'm going out there because I know that there's a lot of people that are relying on me, and I rely on myself for other reasons, right? To continue to play at a high level. So it's a sweat for me every day.
Yeah, have you ever like you're going into it like on a Monday night game or a Sunday night game, and you have yourself on your team and you're down in a matchup and you're like, yo, Justin, I understand they just called an out to Keenan Allen, but give me the ball here. Listen, I got to help myself. Come on. Have you ever campaigned?
I get my fair. I've never had that scenario. Even if I did, I get the ball enough that I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to get it done. So that wouldn't be the case.
Fair enough. Let's talk a little bit of Chargers offense here. You get it as a fantasy manager, so you guys are on a bye. I have a couple questions here about the offense, sort of a two-parter one. Number one is that I think it's obviously benefited you. You're on pace to have more receptions than an NFL running back in history. But it feels like Justin just isn't throwing downfield as much as he used to in the past. Is that how teams are playing you? Is that a scheme reason? Is that because you guys have been banged up at the wide receiver position? Talk to me a little bit about Justin's play, and then play that forward because now you're without Big Mike for a few weeks.
Yeah, so, you're hitting on a lot of the different factors. This is football. It's a very, I guess, complicated game when it comes to things that affect us as an offense. Injuries are a big one. Our ability to run and pass is a big one. And so our inability to run, this far in the season has really, I think, factored into our success. It allows teams just to keep 6 in the box and play too high. So they're going to say, hey, we're going to make you run the ball against us. If you can't do that, we're ready for the pass. And we're not going to let you throw it deep. So you're going to have to dump it down to the flat. So as a consequence, guess who's catching all the flat balls? Well, that's me in the flat. So it's not, I would say, the best thing that I'm catching all these balls. I would rather see, Mike Dubb, Josh Palmer, Keenan, these guys that are running down the field catching balls. And, every once in a while, check it down to me if protection breaks down. So it's not really great that I'm catching these balls. I mean, I'll take it. I got to make something happen. But preferably, I would like it going down the field. But I think that's what the factors, us not being able to have an efficient run game, some injuries, have really played a factor into making us really predictable. And when you're predictable, it's not a great time in the NFL, because then they're just waiting for you and they're going to force you to beat them some other way.
Yeah. You mentioned injuries, Austin, and I assume one of the biggest injuries has been to Rashawn Slater, who wasn't just one of the best rookies in football last year, but also just one of the best offensive linemen, full stop. How do you think the offense is adjusting without Rashawn for the time being?
Yeah, we've had Jamari come in and step up, but it's really hard to replace, or nearly impossible to replace, Pro Bowlers. And we've had many of them, with Joey Bosa that's gone down. Keenan Allen's been sitting out, finally got some reps this last game. And so when you have guys like that, and, guys that you're paying too, that just came in, JC now, just had his injury. What you really lose is a high level of consistency. Jamari's been playing well, been playing at a high level, but is he going to be able to maintain that throughout the year? Time will tell. We don't know. But we know with Rashawn, we know what to expect from him. For Joey, those guys, we know what to expect from them. So that's really what the biggest, I guess, downfall is when it comes to injuries. You expect guys to step up, but you all honestly understand that, okay, we don't know what to expect from these guys that are stepping up. It could be a high level, it could not. It's an opportunity. And so there's so much uncertainty there. So going forward, we have some new guys that are going to be having some new roles on the team. And now it comes down to us just competing and seeing how these guys are going to play out, and trying to get us in the best position to compete at a high level, because we're sitting at 4-3. We have a lot of injuries. Rashawn Slater's one of those. And guess what? The NFL doesn't care. We got to keep going. We got 10 games that we got to go out there and put the best thing that we can together on the field. So that's what it'll be for these next 10 weeks. And we'll see how we come up, week to week.
All right, Austin. So let me ask you this. You're a fantasy manager yourself. So as you hit the waiver wire, you get it. So as the Chargers come out of the bye, you just mentioned you guys don't want to be as predictable. You've got to start mixing things up here. Obviously, tough injury to Mike Williams, who's going to miss a number of weeks here. You do get Keenan back, but who do we want to pick up? Do we want to pick up Josh Palmer, DeAndre Carter? We're going to see some more Gerald Everett. You get it. We're asking this. Come on. Who are we picking up from the Chargers while Mike Williams is out?
If I'm looking at our roster, just looking at the past of what's happened, Josh has been playing a part in our role, or in our game, but I feel like he more so plays that Mike Williams spot if you pay attention to anything that's going on with the Chargers. And so now that Keenan's back, Josh is going to be back on the outside for us, running down the field. And we'll have Keenan back in the short intermediate, doing his thing, man on man. And so I'm picking up Josh Palmer if I can. If he's out there, I'm picking him up.
Austin, you were Matthew Berry's ride or die last season. Number one, were you aware of that? And two, did it play a part of your RB3 finish last season and RB1 overall performance this season? That's a big title.
I'm sure I saw it a few times. There's a lot of people that were, riding the train of Austin just because I was scoring touchdowns. And so, I appreciate all the love. That's why I do all these different shows for fantasy. That's why I give so much love back to the community. That's one of the reasons anyway. And so I appreciate it. Appreciate it, Matthew. And even this year, man, I've been feeling the support. That's why I gave you a follow. Now I follow the show. Now, I've been in your comment section a couple of times, commenting back to people that you mentioned when you mentioned me and things like that. So I'm a fan as well.
To be clear, thank you, Austin. I appreciate that, and I have resisted sliding into your DMs. I may still do it once in a while, but I have yet. But I do appreciate the follow. I've resisted into sliding into DMs. I will say this though. You were my preseason fantasy ride or die last year. Preseason. Everyone jumped on the bandwagon afterwards, but everyone was like, Austin Ekeler's not going to score touchdowns. And I was just like, oh, no. Lombardi is going to make him his Kamara. Like, this is a guy that 2 years ago scored double-digit touchdowns. Like, it's not that he doesn't have the ability. It was just the offense. And so I was on the bandwagon before it was cool, Austin. I just want credit.
I appreciate that. Appreciate that. One of the OGs.
So I'm sure you've heard, as you know, fantasy team names are always a big thing here. We want to run some fantasy football team names inspired by you, and get a thumbs up, thumbs down, whether you approve it or not. This one's an obvious one. X marks the spot. X obviously spelled E-C-K-S.
Or E-K-S. Or they spell my last name wrong?
No. Yeah.
It said E-C, or they do E-K?
What it says on my sheet is they spelled it wrong with an E-C-K-S.
Oh, then that's a thumbs down.
Yeah.
That's a thumbs down.
Yeah.
You got to get the last name right.
You got to get the name right. E-K-E.
Yeah, come on.
What about X Factor, X Gone Give It To You? I don't mind that.
Yep. Double thumbs up there.
Austin Powers. I feel like that's pretty.
Yeah.
It's not unique.
Eck Learning Curve?
That's a new one. I've not heard of that one. I'll give it a thumbs up. Okay.
There we go.
Rated X.
Rated X. Wow. EKS. That's cool. I like it.
It's fair. You do some dirty stuff on the field. Austin Ekeler, we love you. Thanks for joining us so much. We appreciate you. Have a great season. For the happy hour, we'll see you on Sunday. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.